is actually, remember the sort of representation of our process that was up there. This is the one I use when I teach at Olin out here in Needham, Massachusetts. Like I said, I teach user-oriented collaborative design. And so, as I talked about yesterday or earlier today, design thinking is all about seeing the potential and the possibility. And sort of the trajectory that we take is not at all dissimilar from the one we're doing today, which is we sort of start in the world of the concrete. Like down here is concrete, real things, real people, real tangible things, and then up here is abstract, away from the intangible, away from the tangible. And so we started today with observations, which are, I noticed this door doesn't work. That's a tangible thing. Or I noticed this human interaction, could have been better or was fantastic. Real, specific things people said, people felt, very sort of specific, tangible observations. And then we start to synthesize, synthesis being the next phase here. And get to more abstract about that, right? To start to understand, okay, what are the bigger themes? You said you discovered a theme, right? What are the bigger ideas, bigger themes that we're seeing? And as designers, I think we do that very explicitly with Post-its. We also do it very internally, not dissimilar to how we do it now, right? We internalize it, a lot of it personally, and get personal inspiration from it, and kind of get to a place where those are mixing together. We have frameworks that we use kind of intellectually to think about it that Elizabeth is going to talk about, and we also have just a lot of personal experience and intuition that we've gained by getting all of these tangible experiences. Ultimately, what we have to do as designers is shape that reality. So, what we just did, the corner that we just turned as a group, we first externalized the current experience of the world with all of its ups and downs, and then we externalized where we hope, intuitively, internally it will go. What will be the change? How do we hope that experience will change for people who are riding the subway? And then our responsibility in the design world is to design the new reality that lets that happen. The reason that we all had the experience we had so far today is because the tea was designed, or not designed in some cases, in ways that gave us that experience. The social environment, the physical environment, everything else created really the experiences that we had and we shared to one another. And so ultimately, we can't shape people's future experiences just by wishing it was so. We have to change the environment. We have to design something different about the physical, social, emotional environment in order to change that future.
Process, we do just what you did. So come back, share observations. In this case, of course, use a lot of Post-its for individual observations. And then the idea with that is to start to organize that. And whether that's through methods like Arawana has been teaching, so physical methods where a group can get together and share their observations through body motions, or whether that's through something visual like this framework, something we call a framework that's up on the wall over here, where we start to take all these things at different levels, observations at different levels, and start to make sense of them through organizing them in different ways. Any of those processes are something that we call synthesis. And just to talk a little bit about what could be a framework is any way of organizing information to make it actionable for you as you're going back into that concrete phase. So we usually play a lot with the information that we've got and the observations that we've got to figure out what organization of it and which insights were kind of most interesting and important, and how do we frame it so that we can guide ourselves and our team in continuing a really true and transformative design as we go through the rest of the process. So here you can see, visually a bunch of different potential frameworks. So we've got things like 2x2 graphs where you might put different observations or plot different person types on there. We've got things down here like a yin-yang sign, just to talk about maybe the dichotomy, for instance, of the tea that we're experiencing in the organizational sense. Sometimes it works really well for some people, sometimes it doesn't work for others. So it's sort of trying to make visual the really key observations that you think are going to guide and inspire the design.
That you've heard a million times and probably means different things to everybody. But we're going to talk about it in a fairly specific way today, and it's just a tool for generation. And I think what Elizabeth said is really true, is we're going to take some ideas that are pretty abstract now, and we're just going to try to make them tangible and actionable. That's our exercise kind of throughout today and tomorrow. And Brainstorming is a tool that's really helpful in that process. And we find that when we do it, we're looking for a number of things to come out of this process in relatively rapid fashion. So we're interested in speed, quantity, a way to kind of jumpstart a process, right, to get us moving into taking us out of kind of the mundane into things that start to become really interesting, finding some inspiration, generating some enthusiasm, and because it kind of gives us a sense of kind of culture as designers. So there are some specific rules that we are hopeful that you really be able to adhere to. And the first one is just to go for quantity. And the reason for this is not so much that it's like a sport, but actually the fact is that we find that the ideas that really have some oomph or some meat to them, it takes a while to get to those ideas, and you sort of have to exhaust the stuff that's obvious and that's at the top of your mind before you start to make those connections that generate ideas that are more interesting, more unique, and possibly offer more elegant or better solutions to the problem at hand. So go for quantity. Encourage wild ideas for the very same reason, right? And it's not that these wild ideas may be the ones that will actually end up being adopted, but they may lead you to some other idea that is adopted, or pieces of those wild ideas may combine with a more mundane idea to make it something that is actually helpful in the context. Defer judgment. This is actually my first rule, because the thing that most of us do immediately is say, that won't work, I've seen it before, it's too expensive. You know, all those rules or those ideas that we have about why something's not okay. In brainstorming, everything is okay. So not only should you try not to shut down others' ideas, but your own ideas as well. So this deferring judgment is really important. Everything goes, let's make a sketch of it, get it up on the board, and keep it, because you just never know when an idea that may seem silly in one context is actually a really good one in another. Build on the ideas of others. This is the advantage of working in a group. You can borrow things from, a kernel from someone else's idea, apply it in a different way, and really make some headway by doing so. One conversation at a time. We're going to be working in fairly large groups for a brainstorming environment today, so it's important that everybody has a chance to voice their idea, get it out there. We're going to be working visually as well. So, if one person's talking about an idea or trying to tell it to the rest of the group, it's a great time to be sketching your idea and presenting it to be presented after them, so we can sort of get into a flow. Stay focused on the topic, and this is why, sometimes having a little facilitation helps, because as we're encouraging those wild ideas and going off in all these different directions, at times, you sort of have to rein it back in and remember what you're doing and sort of redirect things. And it's fine to let it spin out and then bring it back in and let it spin out again and bring it back in. It's just sort of part of the organic process. And be visual. Like I said, we haven't really, we haven't worked very visually. We're still using a lot of text, but you'll find, the old adage, a picture is worth 1,000 words, is absolutely true. And if you can capture something with a little sort of image or sketch, that gives a good representation of it. So not only, it can be remembered, but also so that someone else can sort of parse it and, be able to use it more rapidly in their own brainstorming. That'll be really helpful. So those are the rules, okay? And each one of these groups, we're going to basically take, we've tried to group the concepts from observation that have come into some areas that we can work on. We're going to have to do a little synthesis first to say, what are these groups, how are things sort of falling out of what we've seen, and what do we want to work on? And then I think we'll be able to find a thematic area that we can crack into with the brainstorming. And with brainstorms, you can't do it for very long. The energy level should be high enough that, after 5 or 10 minutes, you're spent on any given idea. Okay? It's not like you sit down for an hour and do a brainstorm. I mean, that would kill you if you're doing it right. So we're going to just work in short bursts around these ideas, see if we can be generative, and try to get some sense of kind of a funnel of directions that we want to move forward with that seem promising.